Okay, welcome everyone. This is our first offering ever of the Art of Course Redesign, and we are very excited to present this to you all, and we're happy that you're here with us today. So we will start by introducing ourselves. Let me change the slide. There we go.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Radhika Krishnadas. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Program and Learning Design with LSU Online and Continuing Education. And my teams essentially take care of all the online programs and the online courses that go into those programs, as well as on the non-credit side. My team also takes care of all the continuing education offerings. And we also offer faculty professional development, and I will turn it over to Jennifer for her role in our team.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Morissette. I'm the Director of Learning Design and Development. And just to kind of go over our team in more detail, some of you are very familiar with what we do. And if you're not, we are known as the Design and Development Team, and we collaborate with faculty to create learning experiences for online courses and programs. So in building these quality online courses, we facilitate faculty workshops, much like this one, and on different aspects of course design, as well as partnering with faculty to determine the best approach to design, develop, and deliver their course content in a way that achieves desired learning outcomes and goals. So we oversee our team of learning experience designers who many of you are familiar with in designing and developing your courses, or perhaps through our Designer in Residence program here at the A&M campus. So we're very excited to be here, and Radhika and I, this is normally what the designers do. This is their wonderful expertise in providing the workshops for you all, but we decided that we would get a little bit out of our comfort zone and provide the workshop today and facilitate that. So we're excited to do that. We would like to take a few minutes, if you don't mind sharing in the chat who you are. We'd like to know who's joining us today. And then a little bit too, just to kind of go over how things will work today as far as the chat and how to interact with us. We will have a few engagement activities, and feel free to use the chat to work with us on those, or unmute your mic. Lynn Namens is here today too, and she's going to help us moderate the chat throughout the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to pose them in the chat, and we will have time at the end of this session to go through questions and answers. All right. So our workshop objectives, by the end of this workshop, you will be able to determine readiness to initiate course revision process, identify potential course revision goals and relevant data sources, and plan a course revision that accounts for various time constraints. So our overall goal for this workshop is just to provide a high-level overview of what a revision process could look like for your course, whether that's an online course or a face-to-face course that you might be teaching on campus. So we hope that you'll find the topics and ideas that we're going to be covering today relevant to your coursework. Okay, so to start, we want to define what a course revision is. So in our efforts for continuous improvement, we're always looking to find ways to improve or tweak our course offerings. As we know, some changes can be minor, while other changes require more effort and a more targeted approach to see fruition. So conducting what we call a course revision is different from a course update. So you might be more familiar with course updates if they're just little minor changes to content or tweaks, like maybe changing links or different things like that as you're teaching the courses, or immediately after you might teach a course. You might want to make some tweaks here and there. These can be done while the course is being taught, as I mentioned, or can be done on a much more frequent basis. A course revision, however, involves a process of evaluating various parts of your course to determine what is effective, current, or relevant, what's easily understood, and what is not, with the aim of improving the overall quality of the learning experience in the course. So I have a few different examples here listed on the table on the slide. And so I wanted to just kind of take a few minutes before we dig in further of what your thoughts are on whether these examples are a course update or a course revision. So if you want to post to the chat for each one, we'll go through and we'll see which one is an update or a revision. So this first one is changing assignment due dates. Is this an update or a revision?
We've got a lot of updates in the chat.
You are correct. This would be considered a course update. The next is fixing broken or outdated links. So an update. Those are easily things that you can do on the fly as you come across them, whether you're teaching the course live, making those updates, or noticing them and making those edits after the fact. What about adopting a new textbook? Revision, yes. Especially not just, a new addition to a textbook, but a whole new textbook that often requires a much heavier lift. Yes, definitely depends on the topics, Teresa, that's true. So there is some nuance here to these examples. In general, though, if you're adopting a new textbook, it would be a much more time-intensive approach to revising the course. Updating instructional content for currency. I think this also is one that we would consider revision. So if there's outdated information in the course, maybe there's an entire module of content that needs to be revised, that could have many implications in terms of the alignment for the course, maybe the course objectives, the module learning objectives would need to be adjusted and new assignments determined for that. So that would be considered a course revision. What about tweaking specific assignment instructions for clarity? So maybe you're getting a lot of questions from students. Update. That's right. All right, and lastly, our last example here is improving workload for students and faculty. Revision, yes, lots of revisions. And again, Teresa, you're right, it does depend on the scope. Okay, so the overall point in kind of going through these different examples is really to drive home that we want to make sure there's a distinction in the types of steps we're taking to approach a revision versus just an update, which is a normal part of teaching the course and taking that feedback and adjusting things as necessary within the course. And now I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Krishnadas, who will discuss course revision goals.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so as you saw from that table, there are some efforts that need more time commitment and increased level of effort. So since we are looking at a more involved process for a course revision, how can we determine when it is time to take that next bigger step? So as an organic part of your teaching process, whether it's on campus or online, you do get signals on how well the class is performing, where students are doing well and which parts of the course they are struggling. And then, of course, you get the more direct signals from data like the DFW rates or the student course evals. So you have a pretty good idea when you're going into this, whether the course needs a revision or not. But you may also want to look at a few other, at the course from a few different angles, and you see those on the slide, right? So I think you skipped a slide, Jen. I think we're on the wrong slide.
Let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, my apologies.
Yeah, so some of the factors or angles that you can look at your course is the age of the course. Like, when was the course last revised? Depending on the nature of the course content, you may need to look at the content more regularly if it is more prone to fluidity and dynamic content changes, versus some of the content that could be revised in a more stretched out timeline. So definitely look at the age of the course and decide whether it's time to revise. The second one would be to look at enrollment trends, and this depends on the course type. So is it a required course? Is it a gateway course to the major? Is it a high enrollment course? Is it shared across multiple programs? So depending on the course type and the impact, if you're seeing performance issues on those particular course types, you may want to prioritize those courses over courses that are not so specifically positioned in your curriculum, like electives or courses that are offered just once a year could be phased out more, and the other course types may be prioritized more frequently or on a more regular cadence. The next one is student feedback trends, and this could be from your course evals, or you could be getting feedback from your academic advisors on challenges that they are hearing from students or concerns that are bubbling up to the advisor's attention. And again, we want you to look at trend data. So not just one student or two students, but as you teach the courses over several sessions, are you seeing a persistent pattern of performance issues or concerns or challenges that students are bringing to the fore? So those are worthy of your attention to look at. And the final bullet point there are your annual program review findings. So are you seeing things based on the findings that a summative assessment needs to change, or its rubric needs to be better aligned to what the assessment is actually asking them to do? Or you may want to look at the alignment of those assessments to your course outcomes. Like, are you sure that what you're asking in that assessment is directly aligned, tightly aligned to the course outcomes? Right? So those are the kind of things. Or you may be just looking at your success benchmarks. If you said 70% of my students will receive a 4 or a 3 on this assessment, is your benchmark too low or high for that particular course? So kind of looking at the course, the bottom line is, when you're determining course readiness for revision, is to look at the course from multiple angles before you determine, yes, the time and the effort is well worth it to improve the student learning performance and the experience for your classes. Next slide. So as you look at the various signals and the different lenses through which you're examining your course, you can then determine what the goal of your revision should be. So you see some suggestions on the slide. So you may want to increase your course completion rates. And again, you're looking at trend data, not just one session's completion rate, but over time, are you seeing an issue with the completion rates? You may have noticed as you teach that you're getting a mixed population of students. You're getting, first gen, transfer heavy students that need a more differentiated approach. So those sub-bullet points under course completion rates are things that you might want to consider doing. Like, are your teaching strategies aligned or nuanced to deal with a differentiated population? Can we look at UDL to make sure that your delivery and your assignments can take care of that mixed population of students? And similarly, the active learning strategies for engaging students. If you have an older student who has a full-time job and attending classes, what can you do to keep that student motivated and retained in your course so that they can get a meaningful experience out of your courses? So that's kind of the more holistic revision, but you may also just have spotlight revisions, which are more targeted and focused on specific issues that you're seeing in a course. So if you're seeing issues with accessibility, or course outcomes are not specific and measurable and need tweaking, or you're just wanting to look at the course outcomes and the assessment strategy and their rubrics, those can be one targeted, focused revision goal. So you don't have to look at the entire course revision, but you can say, I just want to focus on this one thing, which is a shorter time spent and a shorter level of effort. And then the final thing, I think we looked at this earlier on, is improving the workload. So you may have a large class size and you may be doing a lot of manual grading, right? Or the students have complained of their workload, that there are too many discussion forums, too many assignments. So this may be a time to, again, look back at your course outcomes and then look at what you have in the course and say, how can I streamline the workload, both for myself and for my students? So those are kind of some of the goals that you could think of as you consider revising your course. Again, the bottom line is being intentional with your revision goal can help you save both time and effort in improving the learning experience for your students. So some additional points I want to bring up is think of things that you have heard from your students repeatedly. Like, are you spending your time clarifying concepts or assignment instructions time and again, rather than being able to spend time on the concepts that you actually want to teach? Or come one session, you notice that a software that is an integral part of an assignment is no longer available for students. And now you have to re-examine that whole activity because the software is no longer available. Again, with AI and all the new emerging tools and technologies, are there better ways to enhance student engagement as well as managing your workload? So these are some additional considerations to look at as you consider your revision goal. So once again, who your students are, the demographic will drive a lot of the strategies that you want to apply as you consider revising your course. Like, what's your goal? Who are my students? And will these goals really improve the retention, enhancement, whatever your goal can be? And I'm going to ask Lynn to post the course revision guidelines to the chat. So this is something we put together primarily from the LSU online point of view, but you may find things there that are applicable across the board for both on-campus courses as well as on ground. So Jen, let's move to the next slide. We have a short activity where we are pausing from hearing us speak all the time. So based on what you've heard thus far, how would you decide whether you need to revise a course on a more holistic level, do a spotlight revision, or just make course updates? So think of a course that you've taught now a couple of times. What kind of signals have you noticed regarding student performance, student feedback, or your own personal reflections while teaching? So we'll give you about 5 to 8 minutes. Thank you, Lynn. So think of a course. We would like you to share your course, the number of times you've taught it, an issue that you've identified, and the rationale you used to determine if it should be a revision or just an update. So we'll give you 5 to 8 minutes.
And Lynn posted the question there in the chat, so you can review what Dr. Krishnan has just mentioned. And we'll go ahead and mute, and we'll come back in 5 to 8 minutes, and we'll stop sharing so that we can discuss. How's everyone doing? Anyone need more time? I think we can maybe have 2 more minutes. Okay, so I think everyone's had some time. If you feel up to it, unmute and share.
Or you can type it in the chat, as Teresa's done.
I'll be glad to share. I'm Tina Hathorn. I'm from LSUA, and two of the courses that I wrote several years ago, not under the new GDM, were 2700 and 2900. Both of them were going really well, except I've realized the discussions are not, they're a little bit too broad, and I need to redefine them so that everyone's talking about the same thing and being able to take a little bit deeper dive into the discussion. I also do scenarios, and the reflection, the way I have it written, I'm finding myself having to explain that over and over and over to students. Some of them get it and run right along with it, but then there's always a few that just don't understand it, even though it's only 2 little questions. So those need to just be updated so that it's clear.
Thank you, Tina. And you may want to look at the rubric that goes along with those discussion prompts and make sure that those criteria for evaluating the discussion forum are aligned, as so that the students have a really good understanding of what your expectations are from those discussions. That might help too. It might be worth taking a look as well. I see Will unmuting.
Yes, thank you, Radhika. So I can share a brief one. I've been teaching a course at LSU for the last several years. It's ELRC 7501. It's a course in program evaluation in educational technology specifically, but if you're coming from other social science or related backgrounds, program evaluation is basically the theme. I've taught it several times, and over the last couple of years, I've noticed that more and more students seem to choose the same kind of assignment. And it seems like the course as designed addresses a really broad array. And I've constantly found myself offering those students focused advice. And I thought I should just need to change the entire course, because this is what the vast majority of students are selecting. So yeah, I want to focus it. I think that's going to involve a change to all the assignments and the textbook. So it feels pretty comfortably like a revision and not just an update. And having said that, and not to avoid questions, but I'm interested in people because I'm thinking about AI tools related to this course.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in the people like Teresa, who's already posted, who feel like they need to change their course to kind of accommodate AI use in some way, either affirmative or whatever you're doing there. I'm interested in that rationale very much too.
Teresa, would you be comfortable in sharing a little bit?
Sure. So to go into that with AI, I'm in grad school right now, and I use AI I am the queen of AI. I use it to help me develop outlines and figure out how to reword things. I have absolutely no problem with it. But what's killing me is when I have freshmen community college students who are turning in a paper where if I show it to one of my doctors, they don't understand what's being said. I'm like, okay, what you're doing right now isn't helping you pass your boards, and if you can't pass your boards, your degree is worthless. So it's not necessarily that the using AI that's the problem. It's them learning how to use it effectively and use it as a tool to increase their knowledge and help them develop what they need as far as their education goes, rather than a tool that's like, oh, I didn't do this assignment, I'm gonna plug this prompt into Chat GPT and then not even read what was sent to me, because if I had, I would notice that my instructor did a prompt injection where Chat GPT needed to talk about how purple bananas were good for fixing parvovirus or something like that. So it's like you didn't even try. So that is my goal. Unfortunately, I am an adjunct for this course, so any rewrite that I do has to go to the lead instructor, who's also the program director, for approval. But I'm actively working on a rewrite right now, and my goal is to actually point them towards AI and how AI can assist them in developing their assignments, but also to make it abundantly clear to them that I still expect that their assignments are their own original work. But there are so many other problems with the course in general where students are struggling, and then after they go take boards and we get the feedback, we still see that there are areas within this course that need to be adjusted so that they're more successful. So it needs a complete redesign, probably with a new textbook as well.
Will, does that help?
Oh, it does. And I'm impressed with what was just described there. I've seen some egregious uses, not too many, but where they don't read the output, I'm like, oh, like let's read the output, because I like Teresa, I feel pretty good about using it. I think it's interesting, and I want to learn, and I want my students to become able to use it too. So it hasn't prompted any redesigns for me yet, but it's kind of, it's around the it's hitting me around the margins right now, but who knows what the next round of courses will bring. So
yeah, I've seen some faculty will actually add the critique piece to the assignment instruction, so they get the output, but part of the assignment completion is, okay, critique what you got from Chat GPT. Where does it meet, or how well does it meet this course outcome, or where did kind of get them to think critically about what they received from whatever tool they're using. So I've seen that done a couple of times from my faculty too.
Something else that not to hijack to make everything about AI, but something else that I was thinking about that I've been trialing with my own writing and rubrics is actually giving the students a copy of the rubric that can be copied and pasted into Chat GPT, and then telling them, put this rubric in Chat GPT, put your own assignment in it, and then you tell me how, before you submitted it, tell me how Chat GPT graded this assignment. And if you didn't at least get like a 95%, you need to go back and revise it. Don't submit it.
That's a really cool idea. All right, I'm going to give it back to Jen. Thank you guys so much for your feedback and input. Really helpful.
Okay, one moment. There we go. Okay. So Before our activity, we were talking about the revision goal. So where do you go from there once you've identified your goal? How do you actually go about revising your course? So if we look back at some of those examples that Dr. Krishnadass shared in that table, and also there are some outlined in the course revision guidelines that was shared in the chat. I have a few examples, just two here on the slide that we can go over in more detail. But moving on from the goal, the next step is to start with the relevant data to your goal. So for example, if we look at a revision goal of increasing course completion rates, you'd probably want to take a look at your DFW reports, gather feedback from students, and even gather feedbacks from your academic advisors, right, to identify potential roadblocks for students, whether that could be in scheduling or for reasons for withdrawing from the course. Using these data sources, you could drill down to course specifics to see what is causing the high drop in withdrawals from the course and adjust specific materials accordingly. It's always a good idea to keep running notes. I'm sure many of you do this. So while you're teaching the course, kind of have a document that you can go back and make little notes so that it's fresh in your mind. What are some particular issues, lots of questions that you might be getting from students, and kind of making note to, you know, what reasons or at what point in the course students might be dropping off or being less engaged and that kind of thing. And that can kind of help you to come back and see what areas of the course might need to be adjusted or reviewed more thoroughly. Secondly, here we have improved workload for students and faculty. So if student and faculty workload is an issue, you might want to complete an alignment map analysis or credit hour analysis and use this data to see where adjustments can be made. Similarly, you might need to analyze the textbook, instructional materials, assessment tools. Are there opportunities for different or more efficient delivery modes of instruction or structure and grading of assessments that can be designed to scale? So for example, looking at your rubrics, is there ways to incorporate that into the LMS to make the grading more efficient and things like that? So when drilling down into your data sources, it's also really important to take a step back and look at the big picture. So what are the other considerations that you want to look at and understand about your course when looking at these relevant data sources? And what are the other sources of information that can help to make the biggest impact for your redesign? So you want to look at your student demographic. Who are your learners? In your experience teaching the course, what have you gleaned about their entering knowledge and skill levels? What gaps have you found in their learning? For example, you might have a mostly non-traditional student population who is working full-time while taking their courses. What kind of support or considerations would you need to make in your redesign that could help support that student population? Maybe it's a scheduling issue, right? So if you're holding office hours at 10 a.m. in the morning, maybe that's something that you can consider changing, right, to accommodate a full-time working adult who may only be able to meet in the evenings or something like that. The other thing to consider is the level of appropriateness of your course and how does it fit into the overall program. If your course is a prerequisite for the next level course, how do you ensure scaffolding within your course? Do you determine which topics should be covered at a particular level or as part of a broader course sequence? Should some topics be deleted or added? Some other things to think about is looking at your course outcomes and how students are actually demonstrating those course outcomes in terms of proficiency and program outcomes. Are materials aligned with industry needs and skills? Perhaps you could consider adding in more authentic assessments that could replace current assessments. And lastly, here we have engagement opportunities, and this is particularly important in the online environment. So in what ways can you incorporate active learning strategies to help improve student retention and satisfaction? What was most difficult for students to achieve or for you to assess? And again, thinking about that scalability in keeping with your class size. All right, so now we have another activity. So this time, what experiences have you had in observing and accommodating differing knowledge and skill levels in your courses? So we're going to take a few minutes, not as long as last time, but we'll take a few minutes. And when you come back, we'd like you to share your course and the different student populations that you're familiar with in your course and the strategies that you have used to differentiate instruction. So it's 11:09. We'll come back at 11:12, and we'll stop sharing and discuss again. Okay. So once again, if anyone feels comfortable unmuting and sharing, we would love to hear more about how you differentiate instruction for the different student populations in your courses.
I'll share one of the ways that I do. Mine are 2000 level courses that I'm talking about today. And so they're not real in, hard content areas for the students, but it's usually freshmen and sophomores that are taking them. And sometimes they struggle. I give them a portfolio at the end so that they have to go through and do different activities. So in the beginning, I gave them one specific activity I wanted them to do, and they were struggling with that because some of them live out of town, some of them, just various reasons why they couldn't do it. And so now I give them choice. I give them 2 or 3 options, and if none of those options work for the student, they can then write a proposal as to what they can do to replace one of the options that I've given them. And that has really helped. It still allows them to meet the objective, but they're having to be creative on their end in order to get a replacement.
Seeing some comments in the chat. So we have a lot of similar thoughts on that. Thank you, Tina, for sharing. Is there anyone else that would like to share?
I'll jump in here. One thing that I think about when it comes to differentiation is figuring out kind of like what have been the trouble points up to that point. So for example, I've worked with a lot of students who are in more of like a remedial math sort of setting. And with that, getting a chance to kind of see like previous like exam scores and seeing what areas students struggle in. And when making like course revisions, figuring out like, oh, this is a spot where I need to offer a little bit of additional support. So some of that was pulling resources from publicly available tools like Khan Academy, and other times it was just me turning on my screen recorder and virtual whiteboard and, doing like tutorial videos. And knowing what tools we have out now, I feel like that's something that we could expand further. So like the one I think of most often is like, if you record a video in Panopto, for example, you can set up like online sort of like mini quizzes to sort of like check for understanding, so that students get a chance to, one, get that additional visual instruction if they need it, but then also get a chance to get some like instant feedback.
We do have a question from the chat. How do you ensure that outcomes are met from the student developed assessment?
That was for Tina or?
From Catherine posted it, but I think when in that question of authentic assessments and that student choice, and I think one strategy is to allow them choice, but still expect them to meet the outcome. So they still have to speak to the concept, speak to whatever that topic and those objectives are, but maybe you're giving them the choice between writing a research paper and doing an 8-minute video where they're doing a presentation, still covering the same objectives, but allowing that option.
Yeah, and I would say the rubric is really important here on what are the evaluation criteria, so that whoever is submitting a response, you're sharing that rubric ahead of time, making sure their response is aligned to those rubric criteria and expectations. So I think a well-written rubric, I think, can take care of that really well. Hey, are we ready to move on, Jen? Okay, so what you see on screen is an online course that had not been developed through our design and development team. And so the faculty member approached our team and requested a revision. So what you see there in the first column is problem areas in the course that she identified, and then what were the specific issues that she found are listed in the problem area column. And then what were like her suggested solutions on addressing those specific issues. So she met with one of our assigned designers, and they went through the problem areas that if you see the first one, that's across modules that the students were just not engaging in the discussion forums. And the feedback that she received from the students were that they just didn't like it. And it seemed more like papers rather than just a rich discussion of the key concepts or what have you. So the suggestions that she had was to ensure that the prompt directions were clear, but also more importantly, that the points that she allocated for that discussion prompt were proportionate. So it was not like a 200-point assignment, but you're asking students to write a 2-page paper. So the level of effort and the points allocated needed to be proportionate. So she figured that that was one issue that was needed to be fixed for her course. And then instead of using just yes or no questions or textbook problems, she thought she could use data sets, like real scenario data sets and short cases as prompts, so that there would be no right or wrong, single right answer, but the student could provide input from multiple perspectives, which would lead to a better engagement and a better discussion. So that was the first one. And then specific assignments were problematic in a couple of the modules. So again, the assignments were tedious and lacking in variety. And then she thought she could again use some real life scenarios, simulating what they would actually find in their professional lives beyond the course, and kind of creating assignments like that. Now, at this point, you do need to look at your course load, the class size, and see, even when you're doing authentic assessments, how can you scale them? Because if you have a lot of manual grading, but you have a large class size, that's not really a manageable or feasible scope. So you do need to keep your own course context in mind as you go through possibilities for revision. And the last one was summative assessment. They were not performing well. So I'm guessing she drilled down into her DFW rates to find out how many students were passing, how many were just withdrawing or failing. So through that problem area, you can see the data sources that she used. So when she met with the designer, they decided that the goal was to make the content more engaging and relevant by updating specific assignments, the module 3, 6, and 7, but then looking across the course at the discussions and seeing what concepts are being covered in specific modules, what would be a optimal discussion to have in that module. So then that's the scope of work that the designer and the faculty kind of determine. And as you can see from the problem area, there are data sources that are kind of implied. She used student evaluations, she used her own reflections, and then she used DFW rates to kind of looking at the course from all these 3 different angles and determining, yes, I do need to revise this. So some of these issues are delivery agnostic. You may come across these same things in a campus course, right, when you're teaching face-to-face. So again, just look at your own reflections and what feedback and performance data you're gathering before you decide. I'm going to pause, ask if there are any questions. If not, I'm going to transition to Jen for our final section of the workshop. Any questions at this point? Okay, Jen, back to you.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss the planning process for your revision. So once you've identified the goal of your revision and the data sources, identify potential design solutions. So when you're doing this, you want to keep in mind that solutions might involve simple edits that require minimal effort, like updating instructions to an assignment, while other solutions can be much more complex and time-consuming, like creating new videos, interactive activities, or creating a new summative assessment. A good rule of thumb to help determine the impact of scope is to estimate the percentage of the course that is changing. So we've kind of created a few different buckets of percentages, but one thing, just as an example, let's say under 20% change, you might anticipate this to take about 4 weeks or so. There's a few different, minimal types of edits where only 20% of the course is changing, and you can plan out as far as scheduling out your course revision that it could probably take about 4 weeks or so to do that. While 21 to 40% might take 8 weeks, and 41 to 60% maybe an entire semester to revise your course, and so on. Some revisions might need governance approvals if you're changing, a large percentage of the course outline or course outcomes, and that would extend the timeline as well. So from here, you want to consider the various time constraints that we mentioned. You might have some other personal time constraints as well. So some things here on the slide, we have upcoming program reviews. And this was brought up earlier in our workshop, but if you know that your program is going to its annual review within the next month, you might want to wait until that review is over to get additional feedback before you want to start revising your course. You also want to think about the next time the course is offered, right? If you want to try to get these edits completed and it's a significant overhaul to the course, you want to work back as much as you can from that next offering date and make sure that you've allotted enough time to really dig in to make those edits. Other time constraints, of course, maybe you have research that you need to attend to, or some other or personal timing issues, or grant writing, or going to conferences and different things like that. So considering all those different time constraints, you want to triangulate those with the course or the program, and then again, work your way back and go from there. Another thing to consider is if the course is offered maybe only once a year, you might want to postpone a revision until a few more times the course is offered, so that you can gather sufficient data, again, to examine the trends, like we mentioned earlier, looking at trend data prior to making a decision to revise. Okay, so lastly, we have an overview of the LSU Online course revision process. So we're calling this just a little peek at our process. And as we come to a close, we wanted to share this as a model for how you could manage your course revisions. So if you're a faculty member who develops or teaches courses for LSU Online, this process should look familiar to you, or if it doesn't look familiar, it will, hopefully in the near future. And if not, the steps that we have outlined on the slide could be something that you want to implement for your own courses, or perhaps you want to take this back to your department and discuss with your colleagues as far as implementing a consistent revision process for the courses in your program. So I'll just briefly go over the different steps here, and it's going to look a lot like what we've already covered in our workshop today. So number one, we want to start with tracking an initial a revision check-in period, which is tracked to the initial launch term, or maybe the development completion date. And we want to use this date to initiate a check-in every 3 years or so. So 3 years is just a kind of a general number, which is a good amount of time to go in between courses, just in general. Every course is different based on the type of content, how often it might need to be updated. But at that point, you want to make a decision whether to update or revise the course at this check-in period. So it's a point, once you make that decision to update, we don't, well, just to take a step back, if you decide not to at 3 years, like let's say maybe the course is okay to just do a few updates, we don't recommend going more than 5 years to defer a revision. So especially if it's an online course, we want to make sure that if there's a template being used, that template is up to date and all the necessary edits are made within that 5-year period. So we generally want to avoid deferring revisions beyond a 5-year mark. Once the decision is made to revise the course, the next step is to complete a scope document. So we have a Word document that is basically a table, and it looks a lot like what that example scenario slide looks like that Radhika went over. And this purpose of the scope document is to identify and capture the goal of the revision, the relevant data sources, and then we want to outline the specific components of the existing course that has been problematic or that needs to be revised for whatever reason related to the goal. And then the suggested solutions are also documented within this table related to each problem area, so that the general work to be completed on the revision is documented, and then we can evaluate that. When we evaluate the scope to determine the appropriate we then evaluate the scope to determine the appropriate revision tier. So we do have a tier document that we can share in the chat. And this is basically goes over that percent change that I mentioned earlier. And it's just it's not a comprehensive list of every single edit that could be categorized to a particular tier. When we evaluate a scope document, we want to look at all the different edits made. There could be some things within these different tiers that is in this document that will be shared. We look at that holistically and kind of to understand what percent of the course is likely being changed here. And you can see also that the percent of change is for us is related to how much time it's going to take in general to revise the course. So from there, we want to schedule the course for revision. So we want to look at the course offering cadence. We want to understand the faculty availability and the designer availability as to when we'll be able to set that schedule to revise the course. And then once that schedule begins, then we make the edits to the course within the allotted time frame. And then once those edits are complete, we start that check-in process, that calendar every 3 years to start over, and we'll check in again. So that's just a little peek at our process. And that actually concludes our session. So I'll stop sharing and see if there's any questions.
I do have a question. The word update and revision keeps going back and forth. If you're just wanting to do update, do you still have to go through this redesign process, or is that just for revision? And then my next question is, if your course is at that 5-year or approaching that 5-year, is the revision a requirement? And so then you go back through the whole process again.
So making updates to the course, if there are those kind of minor tweaks, right, like updating broken links or modifying instructions for clarity, different things like that, that can be done on an ongoing basis and does not need to be scheduled out as far as the LSU Online process is concerned. We haven't come across a situation where after 5 years, a course would not need to be revised. We don't make the decision as to no, this course has to be revised. That's completely faculty driven, but we highly, highly, highly recommend that a process is initiated at that point. At least it's on your radar and you want to start looking at your course and making a decision as to whether to move forward.
Okay, so, and I agree with that completely. But like, if I want to change my discussion prompt, do I Do I need to go through a revision for that, or I can just go ahead and do that on my own? Does that need to be approved?
I would say, again, it's kind of hard without actually looking at what the nature of the edit is, but in general, so if it's less than a 20% change, which it sounds like that would be, it's what we would call a tier 1 revision. And so that it does get assigned to a schedule, but it's very much the faculty member on their own can just go in and make those edits. It's just something that we are tracking.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we can wrap up, Jen. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, good. Thank you all for attending today. Same thing, sorry. And we hope that you learned a little bit about, you know, course updates and revisions and what that process looks like and how it can relate to your course. And we hope y'all have a great day.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye.